In this video series, we are discussing how to reach out to others with the life of Christ. What a wonderful study this is. Remember, the gift of the life of Christ is the greatest and most far-reaching gift you can give another person. As we continue our study, we talk with Dr. Cloer as he discusses strategies we can use as we prepare ourselves to reach out to America with the life of Christ. Eddie has been preaching the gospel since he was 15 years old. After attending Harding University and Oklahoma Christian University, he went on to study at Harding University Graduate School of Bible and Religion, earning his Doctor of Ministry degree in 1976. He began teaching Bible classes at Harding University and continued until his retirement after 42 years. Through the years, he has preached in more than 850 gospel meetings in the United States and around the world. Eddie and his wife Susan have 2 children. Their daughter Teresa and her husband have devoted their lives to serving the Lord in Asia. Their son Steve is an assistant professor of ministry at Harding School of Theology in Memphis. Currently, Eddie is the director of Truth for Today World Mission School, the editor-in-chief of the Truth for Today commentary series, and is an elder at the College Church of Christ in Searcy. He is the author of the 3 volumes on Psalms in the commentary series and of several other books. Eddie, at Truth for Today World Mission School, you have been greatly involved in designing the 2022 Life of Christ Challenge. Since this challenge revolves around the 2 books by David L. Roper, will you first tell us about the Life of Christ 1 and 2?
Well, that's easy to do. It's easy to tell others about the book. I know that I'm going to probably overdraw the picture a little bit, but I really believe the 2 books that David Roper has done are the 2 best that our brotherhood has. We went to David a long time ago, back in 2002, I believe, and we asked him to write a very thorough study of the life of Jesus. We wanted him to start with Jesus back in eternity past and then take the reader in a chronological fashion through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, covering every line of the 4 Gospels. And remember, this is 46% of the New Testament. And so he did that. David Roper is a very good writer. He's easy to read and easy to translate. And we have these 2 books in 22 languages beyond English. It's the first time this has ever happened in the churches of Christ, so far as I know. And I think it's the first time it's ever happened in the religious world at large. It's a little bit better than J.W. McGarvey and Pendleton's treatment of the fourfold gospel. They did a good job, and I want to commend them for what they did. But those books are a little over 100 years old, and they wrote back in those days a little bit different than we write now. So the fourfold gospel is harder for our students, for example, to read. And it reminds us of the truth that the most powerful thing on earth is the life of Jesus. And we wanted to put the life of Jesus in a form where anybody could read it to another person and they would be able to follow it easily. We wanted it in a form where a person, by going through the 2 volumes, would confront the totality of the earthly life of Jesus. And we believe that David did that. We believe this is the best that we have. And we believe that anybody who goes through the life of Jesus, they will either become a disciple of Jesus, they will become a Christian, or they will totally reject Jesus. Now remember, Jesus has been rejected before. He was rejected by people who walked with him in the early days when he was upon the earth. But the majority of people, I believe, who go through the life of Jesus will be so fascinated, so attracted to the life of Jesus, to the personality of Jesus, that they will want to follow him. So this is the challenge of the church, to give the life of Jesus to the people. America needs it right now. We cannot get into the political arena, but we can give the people the life of Jesus. That's what we need to do. That's what we've been asked to do. I believe that we can teach the life of Jesus better than almost anybody. Furthermore, there are people out there now who've been beaten up by the coronavirus, and they most likely are more open to studying through the life of Jesus than they were 2 or 3 years before the coronavirus. So this is our time. We have the right message. This will be the most natural way of leading somebody to the gospel. The old saying was, the best way to bring somebody to the gospel is to take him through a gospel. But we've changed that just a little bit. We're saying the best way to bring somebody to the gospel is by taking them through the Gospels. So we want to do the whole thing. We want to take them through the entire life of Jesus, let them see all of His beautiful and wonderful life, and challenge them to follow Him. Challenge them to follow Him because they have come to know Him in the New Testament way. That is, going through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These are the books we need to use. And they have it in there. What we need to do is to utilize the books and take people through the life of Jesus.
These commentaries can be used not only for personal study, but also for personal evangelism. Eddie, how effective are the books in personal evangelism?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I don't know everything, but I really believe that anybody who goes through the life of Christ most likely will become a Christian. Now, the challenge is this: to keep them in the study until they've gone through both books, and also to be aware of the salvation insights that will be coming up. There are 7 or 8 salvation insights, which I'd like to say a little bit more about. But you keep him or her in the study of the life of Jesus until they've finished it. Most likely, they're going to become a Christian before they ever finish the study. If they drop out, though, then that's a sure sign that you may not get them. But if they stay with the study, all 2 books, then they're going to make a decision about Jesus, most likely. This is the most natural way to lead somebody to Jesus. We haven't made it up. We haven't written out, a little plan that they can go through. I have done that in the past. I have won some people that way. But this would be the most natural. That is, this would be the way the Holy Spirit has designed it. You take them through the life of Jesus. It takes them longer to go through it. It may take you as many as 13 weeks per book. But remember, you're grounding them in the life of Jesus as you do it. And whenever they obey the gospel, whenever they become followers of Christ, they're going to really know what they're doing. They are accepting Jesus' invitation to follow Him. He said, if anybody would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. So whenever a person goes through the life of Jesus, he knows full well what the invitation is and how it involves denying oneself and taking up the cross, that is, taking up the cross of living the way Jesus lived and following Him, keeping up with Him. So sometimes we say it, you have to give up, you deny yourself, you have to take up the cross of Jesus, take up living the way Jesus lived, and you keep up with Him as you go out with Him into this world to do His work, to fulfill His mission. These books will work. This type of Bible study will work if we will work it. If we will take them through the life of Jesus, a lot of people are going to be brought to Christ.
As part of the 2022 Life of Christ Challenge, Truth for Today has included a special study called Salvation Insights. Would you tell us more about these Salvation Insights?
The interesting thing about Jesus is Jesus talked quite often about salvation. The Son of Man came into the world to save sinners like you and me. And as we go through the life of Jesus, we're going to find those times when He talks specifically about how you become a follower of Him. For example, Nicodemus came to see Him by night. Now, Nicodemus, no doubt, had heard Jesus preach. He had heard Jesus say something about the kingdom, this new life that's found in the kingdom. So Nicodemus hunted Jesus up, and he wanted to talk to Him alone at night. And whenever Nicodemus finds Him, he said, "Now I've found the right one, I know, because you're the one sent from God. No one could do the miracles that you do except God be with him." And Jesus immediately started talking to him about how you enter the kingdom. He started talking to him about salvation. So you can take this salvation insight that we have in John chapter 3 and take someone through it very carefully, and that really helps them to understand how to become a Christian. So you don't have to wait until the end of the study to invite them to be a follower of Christ. If you do, probably they're going to be talking to you about salvation before you ever get to the end of the book. They will come to you instead of you coming to them. But nevertheless, what you want to do is to be aware of the salvation insights. We've got them marked. We have a little study of each salvation insight that you might want to use. So you will want to watch for those salvation insights, and you want to make sure that when you come to them, you take your student through them. Make sure he understands what that says about salvation. I think David Roper really did a good job in showing what Jesus said about salvation. And what you can do as a congregation, you may tell the congregation, you might tell the elders, or the one who's in charge of personal evangelism, let's watch for these salvation insights. And it could well be that the whole church would want to take notice of these salvation insights and maybe have a special Sunday when they're dealing with one of them. For example, the discussion will be around salvation in Bible class, if you happen to be teaching the life of Jesus in Bible class, and then sequentially the preacher is preaching on it. So there would be 2 lessons, one in Bible class, one from the preacher, that would talk about salvation. And if you can make sure that you have in the assembly that day somebody you're working with, and maybe you've already gone over the salvation insight with that person, studying one-on-one with that person, then you couple that with the class that's talking about salvation and then the preaching that's dealing with salvation, they may just walk down the aisle. But this is a good way to have sort of a Salvation Sunday where you're emphasizing the way of salvation, and you as the personal work team or the reaching out team try to get people in the assembly who need to hear what Jesus had to say about salvation. We've got them identified where you can easily see them, and we've got them set up where you can run those out and make a special booklet of all of the salvation insights that are given by Jesus our Lord.
The next question is about those who will be teaching through the life of Christ. Can anyone teach the series, or should we refer to an expert or a more experienced teacher?
The uniqueness of the series is that anybody can teach it. In fact, I have written a lesson for the teenagers on how they can use it in leading some of their friends to Christ. Here's the thing. There are various ways to teach it. You may choose just to read it to somebody. Maybe somebody in the hospital and they know they're not going to live very long and they'd really like to know what Jesus has said. You may go visit them and just read a little bit, choice pieces from it as you take them through the entire life of Jesus. It's a matter of just reading it to them and letting them listen. Anybody can say, I want you to go through the life of Jesus with me. I'll furnish the books for you if you'll promise me that you will go through the books. Let's meet once a week and just see how each other's doing. You tell me what you've seen that would be really interesting to you, and I may mention something that has been really interesting to me. So it's not being the best teacher in the world. It's being a person who is facilitating an opportunity for Jesus to do the teaching. As they read it, they are listening to Jesus, they're watching Jesus, they're observing Him as He teaches His parables and as He works His miracles. So Jesus does the teaching. And if you meet with them once a week, when you sit down around the table, you want to make sure that you point out to them, now, I'm not the teacher. I want Jesus to be the teacher. And I'm going to turn it over to Him. And when you ask a question, I'll try to take you to Him and let you hear what Jesus has actually said about your question.
What about the mechanics of teaching this series? Are there different approaches people can take in teaching the study?
Number one is just the reading method, that you just read it. You read it to someone. Maybe it's a blind person who needs that kind of fellowship, that you just read it to them. Takes a little while to do it. There are some of you that go help those who are up in years and they can't help themselves, and you go by and see them every day. You might want to read them a portion of the book, just reading. If you're a good reader, that's a good way to teach them. And I assure you, they will be thrilled at that. Maybe you could set it up for them to listen to the reading in your absence. Number two is where you read it together and then meet and talk about it. You may have them to write down key ideas that they thought of or that they saw as they did their reading, and you do the same. And so you meet maybe once a week and you talk about it. You will want to make sure that you point out to that person the salvation insights as you come to them. You want to make sure that they're asking the right questions. If they miss something, you might want to call that to their attention. The third way would be, as you ask them to read with you and meet with you once a week, you give them a series of questions. Now, on our website, we will have a number of questions that you can use, but you give them a series of questions on the section that they're reading, and you ask them to answer those questions. And then whenever you meet, you will take out your list of questions and what you put down as the answer, and you will go over these questions together. That will make sure that they got the main points out of the reading. They were not sleeping while they were reading. They really got the main points. And if you go through the life of Christ that way, you'll have a very good study. It will be comparable to a very thorough study that you might have, say, in a college course, or you might have in a real good Bible class in the local congregation. The fourth way, we do have a series of tests online that will be available to you. And if you choose to use those tests, if they'd really like to do it, some people really like to do this, then when you assign them a reading, you say, now we're going to meet at such and such a time, and we will go over our study guide. You give them a study guide, they work through the study guide, and then you go over it with them, and you make sure that they understand what's on that study guide. And then after 2 readings, that is, after they've gone through 100 pages, there are 5 tests, then they can go to your computer and take the test. And it will tell them what they made, and it will keep a transcript for them. Well, some people really like that. And if you have them ready, where they're making 85, 90, or 95 on the test, then they're really, really excited about it. They realize they can be a good student. They realize that they haven't lost their ability to study well. Now, if they do fail it, that is, if they come in under 70, you can just kindly say, well, let's go back and do some more study on this, and let's come back and take it again. It's when they make 90 or 95 that they really feel like they've done their work. And then at the end of the book, there is a comprehensive type of study that has a test with it that you can use. You just use these if the student wants to. If the student doesn't want to, fine. But if he does, this will be available for you to use. Doesn't cost you anything. You can keep them on your computer underneath your name, and it will keep a transcript on all the tests that they take. So whenever they finish, if they have 85 or 95 composite score, then it's a pretty good sign that they've learned quite a bit in the study.
Ed, you have a great deal of experience in personal evangelism. There is much we can learn from you. As people begin to teach a class, what are practical tools to teaching a good class?
Well, I think there are about 4 keys to teaching a good class. Number 1 would be make sure they go through it. Make sure that they go all the way through both studies. If they go all the way through both books, then you've got something. You've got a good student. You probably will have a Christian. It's as simple as that. If you can take them through both books, most likely they're going to become a Christian. That's number 1. Then number 2 would be you need to make sure that they go through the salvation insights. You'll see those coming up, and make sure that they get that. Make sure they go through those. That's good. And then number 3, make sure you're excited about the study. I mean, this is the best study they could ever have. This is the best gift you could ever give them. And you need to convey that in your spirit. You need to convey that in your attitude. And do not let them miss. Even if you have to meet with them every Thursday night and buy them a meal, whatever you need to do, don't let them miss. And don't you miss. I think that would be the main keys. Another one that I would mention to us would be get a helper. Don't try to do it alone. Find some good helper who's going to be with you for every meeting. And if you are sick and you have to be out of place, your helper can go right on. You will be missed, but you'll have a helper who can carry it right on. But sometimes, in teaching a class and answering questions, it's a good thing to have another person there. I've got a good friend. His name is David Bangs. And David, whenever I teach a Bible class, is usually there at my side, or he has been in the past. As much as our schedules allow, he is always there at my side. And David is a wonderful storyteller. He's exciting to be around. So I like to have him with me where he brings some excitement, some joy, to the study that we're having. So pick out a real good helper, somebody who's going to be faithful, who's going to be there, and you put together the best Bible class on the life of Jesus that you can, and you're going to see in the course of a year, it depends on how many people you take through the life of Christ, you're going to see several people obey the gospel as a result of your work.
As we think about beginning our own Bible studies with people around us, what special advice would you give us?
I believe my special advice would be just do it. I mean, we can talk about it. I've taught several personal evangelism classes in my career as a preacher, but I've found the hard way that you don't want to just talk about it. You want to go do it. It's one thing to talk about it. You need that, but you have to go do it. Just do it. I remember way back there that we were talking about starting this class, Susan and me, and we talked about it. And one day the bug man came to check our house for termites and other types of bugs. And he was a wonderful man. He was a very talkative man. As he went through our house, he saw the religious books that we had, and he started asking some religious questions. Well, I tried to respond properly to those questions, but my wife was more astute, and she called his name, and she said, why don't you study the life of Jesus with us? And he said, well, I would really like to do that. I mean, there was nothing to setting up that Bible study. She just had to think about, let's invite him to study the Bible with us, study the life of Jesus. So we started meeting with him on Thursday night. And we'd have a sandwich for him. Norm Stone was my helper, and Norm just enjoyed doing that more than anything. So when I couldn't be there, Norm would take it over, and he and I took that man through all of the life of Jesus. And he didn't want to stop. He wanted to go through Acts, so Norm took him through Acts. And then he wanted to go through Romans, and so they went through Romans. And now I think they're doing Ephesians and Philippians. But that was all due to Susan just doing something. You know, here was a man, nice man. Why don't you study through the life of Jesus with us? So there's a time to think. We think about it in our personal evangelism programs. We think about it when we're talking to one another. We think about it when we're lying in our bed at night. You know, personal work is really good. But we don't want to just keep thinking about it. We've got to do something about it. And so we're hoping that you'll take these videos and really go through them, and that you'll work with them thoroughly until you are a good soul winner. But you have to go ahead and start. You have to go ahead and begin. Go and try. If they say no, okay, all right, at least I tried. And find somebody else. But just stay at it. And before you know it, you're going to have a Bible study going. And it will be a good Bible study. You'll have good content. You know what you're doing. And you're going to see some people obey the gospel. It's just a matter of starting. So start. Just do it.
As we turn our hearts to taking up teaching the life of Christ, do you have any especially helpful and encouraging stories to tell us?
A number of years ago, my wife and I were working with the Blytheville Church of Christ in Blytheville, Arkansas. And we were trying to do all the personal evangelism that we could do. There was a man coming to the services who had never obeyed the gospel. So we decided one Tuesday night we'd just drive out to see him. I called him before we went, asked him if we could come, and he said he'd be glad for me to come. So we went over to see him, and I just took out a sheet of paper, and I wrote out some of the passages that you will be studying through as you go through the life of Jesus. And I had him to read them. You always have the person you're studying with to read the passages himself. And then you write down what he says about that passage. So I was having him to read the passages and just list what he needed to do in order to be a Christian. Well, we came down to the end of the study, and I said, now, what are you going to do about this? He said, well, I need to think about it a little bit. I said, well, is this the truth that you read to me out of the Scripture? And he said, yeah, I believe it is. I said, well, how long do you need to think about it? He said, I don't know. And, you know, I was probably too forward about this, but I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come back this time next week, and I want you to be ready. You'll have the whole week to think about it, but I want you to be ready. So we said goodbye and went on our way back to our apartment. And as we drove back to the apartment, I told Susan, I said, Susan, maybe I was too forward with him. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Next Tuesday night, we're going to go back, but I'll let him tell me whether or not he's ready. I won't say to him, now you're ready. I told you I'd be back. I'm not going to do that. I'll let him tell me. So the next Tuesday night, we went back to see him, and he received us well, and we sat there and visited with them. His wife had some pie for us. She served us some pie. And we talked about this, that, and everything in the country, except I didn't bring up what I said I was going to do. So finally, we thought we needed to go ahead and leave. So as we were making our way to the door, he went with us to the door. And Susan had gone outside the door, and she was standing outside there and waiting for me to come. And it was just this man and me at the door. And I said to him, I said, well, I thought that you'd be ready. You know, I told you that I was hoping you'd be ready by tonight. I thought you were going to be ready. He said, well, I am. I've just been waiting for you to bring it up. And I'll never forget that, because sometimes we think we've said too much when we've said what we thought we needed to say. And sometimes we need to just follow up with what we have planned. So here you are studying personal evangelism. Now you need to follow up. You need to go ahead and try to teach somebody the gospel.
We would like to thank Brother Cloer for sharing with us the overall strategy for the class. We would also thank him for his leadership in putting the 2022 Life of Christ Challenge into place. Congregations throughout the country are going to be using it, we're sure. We believe that many will be reached with the Life of Christ in 2022. We will do our best to answer this call to evangelism. Our prayer is that this year will be our best year ever for reaching out to others. Remember, the gift of the life of Christ is the greatest and most far-reaching gift you can give another person. Now, here's your assignment. Number 1, begin planning how you will take 2 or 3 people through the life of Christ this year. Get the books you will need and become familiar with the Life of Christ Volume 1. Notice the list of questions and other materials on the website to help you as you begin taking people through the life of Christ. Number 2, find the place you will have your study, your house, the church building, or maybe a nearby restaurant. Think about the assistant you will have working with you. Remember, Jesus sent His disciples out in twos. Number 3, begin planning how you will conduct the class. Work with your assistant teacher on who will take the lead for each student. Find out where you can get study guides and quizzes for yourself and the student. That's your assignment for the next class.